Good morning, everyone. Welcome to ATARC's Federal Sales Virtual Summit. For those of you who don't know, my name is Tom Suter. I am the Advanced Technology Academic Research Center's CEO and founder, or ATARC for short. And we've been doing this, 6-7 years, bringing government, industry, and academia together to kind of solve problems. And we're going to do something a little different. This is our, I want to make this an annual event, but this virtual sales event is really in this unprecedented year of pandemic and a new administration coming up. We kind of changed the way we do things here. So it's been a very big challenge for all, lots of opportunity. I know here at ATARC, we've hired 4 new people, and we've had to adapt ourselves and our business model and to this new environment. So going to have a very interesting discussion. We're going to start off with a keynote, and then we're going to bring in our experts in a couple of different industries together to talk about this subject. And we want to make it very interactive, lots of questions, lots of Q&A. We're going to definitely engage with you all out there. So anyway, a huge thank you to all of our speakers today. Should be a good day. And our first keynote, getting right into it, is Michael Crosby, the CEO of Leadership Connect. And Leadership Connect is a product. It used to be like kind of the yellow pages of government, but they've really expanded their services, and they're connecting public sector and private sector influencers through reliable and trusted data. We use their product. It's fantastic, and they have a lot of insights that you're going to see in this keynote about what to expect in the upcoming administration. So Michael, you want to jump on?
There he is. I'm on.
How are you doing today?
I'm doing great, as always. Working out of my office in my house.
You always got a smile on your face. I like as I get older, I like people with smiles on their faces. So where are you out of?
I am about 12 miles from Manhattan, in New Jersey. I'm normally pre-corona is in DC every couple of weeks, but I had to close up my apartment late last year, and I'm going down maybe once every 6 weeks now.
Yikes. Well, thank you for coming, and I look forward to your presentation.
All right, great. So should I jump right into it now?
Sure.
All right, let's do this. Okay, screen 1. All right, perfect. And all right. So hopefully everyone can see my screen. If not, just shout out. So thanks so much, Tom. Really happy to participate in the event today. I'm going to go through a fair amount of material, so I'm not going to read everything off the slide. So you'll be able to get these materials afterwards, either through the rebroadcast or I'm happy to send out the deck. All right, so let's jump into it. A little bit about me. Actually grew up in a political family, spent my childhood knocking on doors, campaigning for my father for about 20 years. So that was my exposure to the public sector space, was knocking on doors during election campaigns, Sunday mornings. A few years afterwards, I ended up founding the hedge fund team at Thomson Reuters. Got to work with a lot of quant funds there, and really decided I love working with data and technology. And then ended off, turning around 3 data and technology companies really over the last 10 plus years. The last one was focused on people intelligence. So we track people in the corporate space, board members and senior executives, and ended off creating a product that maps investment banking and legal relationships, trying to figure out who knows who within a board and general counsel context, and actually created a patent around that. And father of 3 boys, picked up a coronavirus puppy in March, who faithfully sits next to me every day. So Tom had mentioned, Leadership Connect. It's actually a pretty interesting business. It's been around for 50 years. It started off with 2 guys who turned around Avis Rent-A-Car half a century ago in the 60s and 70s. We're raising money to complete the Washington Cathedral, and from there created a directory of who's who in DC across the public sector, nonprofit, private sector spaces. So you can actually see a gargoyle of one of the founders on I think the south end of the cathedral. And the company, at least the directory part of the business, peaked out in the 2000s, where they printed enough directories to wrap around the planet twice. My colleague Hugh Murphy and I joined a little over 3 years ago and really took this big data technology concept to people information in the public sector space and applied big data principles to it to connect people, policy, and federal spend together. So today we work with close to 4,000 clients. The biggest vertical we work with is actually the government itself. So we have a research team in DC. And one of the advantages of being around for 50 years is we've actually built relationships with many of the offices we cover within the federal government, so the individual departments, the Hill, Senate offices, et cetera. So it really gives us an interesting perspective from both sides, both the contracting community, where we tend to work with tech companies, professional services, cybersecurity. Those are involved in demand generation. And on the government side, we kind of see both parties working together. So the number one line we heard in 2020 is, by the time you need a relationship, it's too late. We actually heard that on the federal government side, as well as the contracting community side, especially from large tech and consulting firms. What that means is the majority of deals don't happen because of lack of relationships. And I think many of us involved in sales over the years would agree with that. I thought of all the examples last year where it was difficult to build relationships, and these two come to mind. So we have a number of clients who work with small business administration, really good relationships both with appointees and some of the senior executives. And what they found was, if you didn't have a relationship with the SBA prior to the CARES Act, there's no way you were getting in there. And even our clients that kind of have personal relationships, people's cell phone numbers, can text back and forth, they're barely reaching through to senior directors there, appointees, and for someone to build a new relation there, next to impossible. The other place we saw was somewhat humorous, was governors, chiefs of staff. So we track, within our product, we track each governor's office, their executive staff, including chiefs of staff. And we had a number of clients call us up and say, like, hey, this information is wrong. So we reached out to all 50 offices ourselves and found that their inboxes were physically full, imagine that. And then their voicemail boxes were full. So same thing. I mean, there's no way you're going to build a relationship in a governor's office post-COVID unless you had a relationship already. So that antidote bottle in the bottom right-hand corner of the screen really speaks to the importance of building relationships or leveraging referrals before you really need them. Number one question we're getting right now is, how do we capitalize on changes in the administration or protect what we have? So through our data science team, we've done a lot of analysis of the transition team, close to 700 people. We're already seeing a lot of movement and have for quite some time. So let me take you through some observations of the transition team. There's been a fair number of articles talking about Biden, quote, getting the old team back together. And certainly the largest group within the transition team are people who come from the Obama administration. And what we see with the transition team is similar to the Trump landing parties, was about 70 to 80% of them end off going into the administration. And you can see some of the logos on the right of where people come from. So Brookings Institute, probably not a big surprise. ACLU, but Dan and Yogurt, Capital One, Smithsonian, Booz Allen, obviously the Biden for president campaign. It's a very eclectic group of people. I put arrows over some of the more interesting ones. So the corporate space, think tanks, nonprofits, state and local. So these are where these people are coming from. And what was interesting is Q1 last year, we saw a number of what we think of as our kind of top 1% relationship builders. So people are really good networkers, really good at building relationships. We're actually reaching out to each of the Democratic presidential, people running for the presidential campaign in building relationships. So those that have built relationships with the Harris and Biden campaigns ended off having to leg up because in Q1, Q2 last year, they'd already built some relationships that are now, they hope, carrying them through to 2021. So, if you're looking really far ahead, you can be thinking, Ivanka Trump, Chelsea Clinton, 2028. We broke out like where people from past administrations, where they're coming from. So obviously, the Obama administration has the heaviest influence, but maybe a little surprisingly, you see people from the Trump administration, prior Bush administration, going into the Biden administration. One thing that we encourage our clients to leverage is alumni networks. And we often think about information that you can use to get a meeting or information that you can use in a meeting to make it better. And alumni networks are something that kind of are on the line helping you with both, but certainly in a meeting, it's going to help if you both went to Howard University or GW or similar. And you can see that the Biden-Harris team, they're from all over the country. In red, you can see some of the DC-centric universities. And what I thought was really interesting with this is you see the influence of Harris, the number of people that went to the University of California. That's a number 2 school on the list. So navigating the transition, I'm not going to read all through this, but you can see that Trump political appointees only have about another week in the administration. But what was interesting is we started seeing a lot of turnover really going back to late summer. So I think the turnover vacancy rate was up to 14%. So normally in the 4th year of a presidential term, turnover really slows down because people want to wait until after the election, but we started seeing it late summer into the fall. And what that means, and I think the guidance here, is that the top career professionals end off serving in this active leadership role. And it's really important to build relationships with those individuals and their support team. Once we get into kind of the spring, then that's going to be a really good time to build relationships with new appointees. Probably the first 4 to 6 weeks of them landing is going to be a more internal focus for them. But once they get past that, unless you have a pre-existing relationship, that's the time to work towards relationship building. And just the upper right, kind of a little primer on presidential appointees, who those include, Schedule Cs, which I'll get to in a little bit, and then top career professionals, SESs, GS14s, 15s, is primarily who we're talking about. At the bottom, you can kind of see some key dates. So the Biden administration works on the 22 budget proposal. April, May, we have the Louisiana special elections, and the rest you're welcome to get as a follow-up or screenshot it. I'll just spend a few seconds on this slide, looking at discretionary spending in the federal budget. So you can see on the far left, defense, transportation, veterans are the 3 big ones. That's going to drive my next slide, looking at some key changes within the top 4 departments. So when you're thinking of the balance of careers versus appointees, what's interesting in this slide is you see in the top row across DOD, DHS, VA, and HHS, it's almost the same number of appointees per department, but the number of careers obviously within the DOD is the highest. So for DHS through HHS, The share of appointees amongst careers is about a third, whereas the DoD, it's about 18%. Again, what we saw kind of going into late summer and obviously happening now is just the number of vacancies picking up is really significant. And so this was a strategy that we saw some of our clients really working on last fall to build those relationships with the careers who would move into acting positions. I thought I'd give one example for Department of Homeland Security. Chris Krebs and CISA obviously has been in the news quite a bit. And you can see that Brandon Wales moved into the acting director position. Steve Harris is the acting deputy director. But Kate Nichols, who's the deputy chief of staff, GS15, there's a good example of someone that is maybe a little bit below the radar. Typically, that if you were to build a relationship with her, that would give you pretty good access within CISA. Office of Biometric Identity Management, that's a up and coming group that we've seen from last year, and I'm sure we'll have a lot more focus this year. Shawnee Lyons, the director, and then Dr. Ken Fritcha is the Identity Technology Division director. What's interesting about him is he used to run Army Knowledge Online, which thinks of themselves as one of the world's largest internets. We see that group being more active in 2021. Quick thing on makeup of the federal workforce, about 2 million people, GS14s, 15s make up about 12% of that. A couple things, what I find really interesting is about a third of them are veterans, so that's something to keep in mind. We talked about alumni, but being a former service member has a powerful impact on networking within government. SESs, it's a little over 7,000. And what's interesting here, which I think works well with this conference, today, is only about 15% of that 2 million people are physically in the DC area. So 85% are outside. When you look at SESs, it's almost the exact reverse, where it's close to 85% are in the DC area. Schedule season scheduler. So we see this as the kind of secret sauce for sales leaders that are really good at building relationships. So one of our users mentioned, schedulers and Schedule Cs, those are the people you want to build relationships before you have to get a meeting set up with the individual they work for. For someone to spend a little more time on the private sector, you don't see those two roles as much. Obviously more prevalent in the public sector. Across federal agencies, there's about 1,400 of them. Amazing gatekeepers. I have two examples on the right. So Senator Cantwell, she's going to be the expected Transportation Committee chair. Sheila Dwyer is her scheduler, but she was actually the chief of staff for Klobuchar, and then she was the policy director for Reed. So someone who knows the Hill extremely well, and if you could build a relationship with her, a great person to navigate the Hill. On the agency side, and this one's only going to be, I think, relevant for a few more days, Tala Gadarzi, scheduler for Secretary Ross. She used to be Perry's scheduler when he was at Energy, and then she was administrative assistant on the Trump campaign. So I think those are people that, again, are below the radar, are really important to building relationships with senior people. They can also give you guidance. So if you want to know what's the best way to reach out to a director, or in this case Senator Ross, getting insight from Tala on what's the best way to approach it, put together an email, letter, whatever it is. I think these people can give a tremendous amount of guidance if you have a good relationship with them. A couple ideas on defense. So the National Defense Authorization Act is establishing the National Cyber Director within the White House. So that's up to 75 people, kind of post SolarWinds hack. That's a good, that'll be a group that will I think, drive a lot of decisions over the next 18 months. So that's one to watch out for. The three groups on the bottom. So platform one, which is housed in the Air Force, focused on software developers. They've been, very active in a, coronavirus world. Also, I think you need to watch some Star Wars movies because everything's leveraged to Star Wars when you read about that group. Jake, which I think maybe Tom might touch on later, bills itself as Department of Defense AI's transformation hub. That's one we see as being more active in 2021 and 2022. And then DevCom, which sits in the Army Futures Command, focuses on tech-enabled solutions. So I think those four groups are ones that you should have on your radar in 2021. So we talked about AI a little bit. I wanted to give a couple examples of AI procurement. So I went into our product, kind of pulled up, the latest four things I saw in terms of opportunities in artificial intelligence. So CDC has a social media monitoring RFP out there. What was interesting is a contracting officer, Denidra Threat, great name for a CEO. She's mostly procured wellness services, nothing to do with artificial intelligence. So I think that's one, knowing that information would help you prepare your response to know that you need to focus on, delivering your material much more towards a layperson. And then it also speaks to maybe Kate Galatas, who's the acting associate director in the comms group, which is sponsoring this, would probably be a good person to connect with. We saw AI opportunities within USGS, Evans Army Community Hospital. I thought the FedSim within GSA would be a good one to look at because it's kind of the opposite of the CTC one. The contracting officer there has procured, complex services in the past multiple times, and then the person who runs that group is extremely tech savvy, given his background and the fact that he's a fellow at the Harvard Kennedy School. So hopefully those are some good ideas to get 2021 started off before I kick it over to the panel. Finish off with a quote from Zig Ziglar, who's a favorite of mine. I believe that you can get everything in life you want if you will just help enough other people get what they want. Thanks, Tom.
Thank you. And that's very interesting. And I think one of the things that we've tried to do at ATARC is really align with some of these initiatives. So for instance, you brought up a couple of ones. Nick Shalon runs the runs development pretty much for the Department of Defense. He's the chief software officer. So Platform One, he's been engaged. He's head of our DevOps working group, and they've been having a lot of activity in that area. And then of course the Jake we're really aligned to, and I really think that's going to be the center of gravity, just because they're getting money. And they're doing, they're going to be basically responsible for the inventory of all AI projects. And they actually recently got contracting authority. So you can expect OTAs and other types of things. And then that links into GSA and the Center for Excellences. So what we try to do at ATARC is really align with these, where we think the winds are going as early as possible. And it's great because we have so many of our partners come to us and say, hey, you know what, this I'm reading the tea leaves. This is where the direction of this particular technology is going, and we get them involved with our working groups. Now, once you're in a working group, you can't really, pull out your business card on the first day. You really need to, it's really meant to not be a sales effort, but what's happened with people, the way people leverage ATARC is they get to know the folks, they get to understand their needs, and then they have a bilateral meeting after everything is going. But Michael, any surprises as you did this? I noticed there were no Virginia Tech Hokies. That was the first thing that stuck out on the administration so far. Hopefully they'll be able to correct that mistake down the road. Was there anything what was the most surprising piece of data you had as you did this exercise?
I think what was what's interesting is really what's happened over the last 2 or 3 weeks, where we see a lot of Trump appointees, Schedule Cs move back to the Hill and then move into think tanks. So even though you might think, hey, Trump administration, it's over and done with, I think a lot of these Schedule Cs and a number of these appointees might not be overly political. And so being able to leverage them for knowledge back into the agencies that they worked with, I think is a really good opportunity that not a lot of people are thinking of. Like, I think Hugh later on is going to show an example of such a person who was in the Obama administration, but has been sitting within a think tank for a number of years that could give people a lot of insight into building relationships back into the DoD.
Great. Well, thank you for your insights, Michael. We appreciate it.
Thanks, Tom.
Okay. That was Michael Crosby with Leadership Connect. And now we are going to go into our panel. So can we have Chris, Matt, and Cam pop in? There we are. Good to see everybody. And, we really, this panel, I was saying before, we want to have lots of questions, but we're going to kind of start off with, I'm going to have each of the panelists talk a little bit about their perspectives over what's happened this last year and where things are going. And then we'll kind of open it up. I might ask a few questions, but I really like that. We want to have that engagement with the audience. So just real quick, I'll just do some quick introductions and then we can dive into it. But we have Cam Mosley, Carrie Ann Mosley. She goes with Cam usually. Area Vice President of Federal at DocuSign. How are you doing today, Cam?
Good morning. I'm doing well, thank you.
And Cam, where do you hail from?
I live out in Loudoun County in Northern Virginia.
Okay, all right. I think we're neighbors. I think actually, now that I wasn't sure where you live, we may have Loudoun County. This may be a Loudoun County panel here. Next up, we have Matt Mandrock, head of U.S. governments at Zoom, who actually is a Hokie, by the way. I'm going to steal your thunder this time. But I will say, and so anyway, how are you doing today, Matt?
Oh, well, thank you. And happy 2021 to everyone.
Yeah. So Matt's been pretty busy. We'll learn about, there's this little company called Zoom. You may have heard of it. It's kind of, taking the world by storm here. So we'll hear from him. And then last, but certainly not least, we have Chris Townsend, Area Vice President, Public Sector at Uipath. How are you doing today, Chris?
Hey, good morning, Tom. Thank you so much for the opportunity to be here with you today.
Great. And I know you're from Loudoun County as well.
I am. I'm out in Western Loudoun, out in Percival.
Yep. And we have Michael Crosby. Sorry, Michael, I cut you off there after your keynote, but Michael is going to kind of like help us with insights. So we got him back after a short respite there. So anyway, why don't we go ahead and let's maybe Matt, you can talk about, of course, you came on, you got to tell everybody your backstory of when you actually came on to become, to run Zoom for government. That's kind of a cool story. And just kind of what you've seen as we've gone on this rocket ship since COVID.
Yeah, well, thank you. It is an interesting story. I started March 23rd, and I signed on in February timeframe as everything was starting to happen. And when I came on board, they had this great onboarding process. I basically got my computer on and I was on calls and right in the thick of everything going on. It was kind of needed at that time because, we had our FedRAMP version of our platform, but we had a very, very small group and we had a lot of discussions across governments that we had to have. So it was a interesting time, but I will share, thinking through it and kind of reflecting on 2020, the customers, I think of two words in this whole process. People use IT modernization, but I would say transformation and evolution. That people had to evolve to a different way they do business. You look in one of the government agencies, they sent 3,500 people home. And what they found over 6 months is their productivity actually did not decrease at all. So now what they're looking at is implementing technologies that allow them to hire people outside the DC metro area because they may have a great skill set in Florida or Raleigh or in Texas, Midwest. And that person doesn't want to move to the DC area, but if they can pull that person in and use technology to tie together. The second, we kind of talk about, as they're evolving that business, we've had to evolve in sales. You look at just at Zoom in general, we've hired over 1,000 people in the last 8 months. And not one of those individuals has stepped foot in an office or met their boss or their peers in person, except for those who knew others beforehand. We have I can't even tell you how many new leaders, just brand new first line leaders who are trying to motivate their teams. People come up with the most creative things. We have a virtual backgrounds you see here. People will have favorite movie or favorite album. For those of you who are younger, an album, you can look it up on Google and see what an album is. But album covers, just fun things and cooking to engage the team and sort of that bonding and everything that comes across. And if you look at this in sales, one thing that I think would maybe not be shocking to people, but it was when I first heard it. People are saying in this environment, they're getting more meetings with government customers than they had before. So you think about this. If I had to go to DC and go meet with somebody, I had to get in my car, drive down, ride the metro, park, go through security, sign in. I have a half-hour meeting. The individual or individuals we're meeting with are 10 minutes late. That got cut down to 20 minutes and we didn't get through everything we need to. Now we're seeing that the productivity of our sales organizations, people are saying, hey, I can get on a call. I can have all the people on that call utilize the full 30 minutes and be able to get to decisions faster. We're starting to see sales cycles actually speeding up. And I hear this from peers across the board. Sales cycles are speeding up because people have to move so they can do quick calls. They're not having to worry about flying somewhere at this time. And you talk about and they're having to transform how they do things. And the last thing I'll kind of mention is really around on leadership. I mean, we kind of talked about how industry and government working together. We're helping people understand how they can learn. You look at since Tom's your organization ATARC, how you sponsor an agency and you have their IT day. Well, you bring in the vendors and other people and all of the different industry people, we're all talking together. I mean, a lot of us know each other from previous lives and how we're also coming to customers and saying, look, let's pull this solution together. Let's pull these 2 or 3 things together and let's go to the customer as one and show them that this telework or this platform that they're going to utilize is something that's going to benefit them as they're going forward. And there's only 3 choices. Everybody goes, what's going to happen in the future? There's only 3 things that are going to happen. You're going to work from the office, you're going to work from home, or you're going to be a hybrid environment. So you can prepare for those 3 things. And as you're in your sales cycle, understand how you're helping a customer utilize your solutions that are going to allow them to, first be simple. You don't want them to have a heavy upload on, IT staff or support staff around those things. So making it simple, making it scalable so they can move, whether there's a pandemic, a natural disaster, they're scalable to grow within that solution. Innovative, bringing feature sets and other things out there that they may not have had in the past. It may take a lengthy amount of time. Another one really key is extensibility. You look at, if I have investments in all these other solutions, but if I can integrate them and automate some of that process, that becomes a valuable component to that end customer. And then the last is making sure it's a secure solution. So there's just a couple opening thoughts, Tom, that I think we wanted to share out there with the team.
No, I appreciate that, and we'll dive into some questions later. Next, Cam, you want to go ahead? Well, one thing that's kind of good timing is that we were really at ATARC, we're talking about the 21st Century Idea Act, and it's basically how we need to, get to a situation where we're not using paper. And we've been talking about the paperless office since 1976, but I think pandemic might have actually superseded all that and the law and everything else. But thank you for coming today.
No, thank you so much for having me. And my tenure at DocuSign is comparable to Matt's tenure at Zoom. I signed on in February, joined in late March. And since then at DocuSign, we've grown our federal sales organization from 5 account executives and 1 sales leader. And we're going to be starting our new fiscal year on February 1st with 21 sales executives and 4 sales leaders. And we've seen proportional growth in state and local and our small and medium government businesses. So really, this pandemic has shined a light on a problem that we all know, and you've alluded to it here, Tom, is paper. There's nothing transparent about paper. And as we think about the new administration, transparency is a major initiative for everyone coming into the new administration. And how can we streamline and make government processes more agile and more transparent? And reducing paper is certainly a mandate around that. And we have been working with a lot of the incoming Congress to get some funding around that 21st Century Modernization Act, because it was in the year 2000 that Bill Clinton signed the e-signature act. And then Representative Rohana supported us with that 21st Century Act, but there was no money associated with it. So what we're seeing now is that Congress is looking at how can they support the agencies by applying funding so that they can take these great ideas and make them a reality. And so I think we're very optimistic that the new administration is going to have a major emphasis on technology, as we've heard, on transparency, because not only is paper not transparent, but if you have to put paper in the US mail, we all know how reliable and efficient that process is. Really, once you lose control and putting PII on paper and then putting that in the mail is definitely a risky business. Not because, I think the mail is certainly reliable, but there's just a lot of hands touching it at that point. And so we're really helping agencies to try to, adopt technologies in a secure way that allow them to make processes more efficient. One thing that I have is one of my New Year's resolutions is to stop saying the word unprecedented. When we think about the time in which we live, I can think of 3 or 4 unprecedented things that have happened in the last week. And unfortunately, some of those haven't been positive, right? But there are some unprecedented things that have happened, like the fact that we got this vaccine in under a year and are now distributing it to people. That is a truly unprecedented thing. And as I thought back, I had my 50th birthday during this pandemic, and I thought back on my 50 years, and I realized that the velocity of things that we would call unprecedented is truly remarkable, because I can think about the 70s and 80s where we had significant event maybe every couple of years, and here we're having unprecedented events in the same week. And if we look at the election in Georgia and the situation at the Capitol, in 1 week, 2 very unprecedented things happened. So what that said to me is we have to stop using this word, because unprecedented and surprises are the new norm. And it's our job as sales leaders bringing technologies like Zoom, like Uipath. We're working with some partners on the digital identity space like ID.me to bring technology to our government customers that allows them to be agile and transparent, so that when the next unprecedented thing, I like to call them surprises, sounds better to me, but when the next surprise happens, the government is able to respond and react more quickly. And I look forward to talking, with my panelists about how we're helping our sales teams to bring those solutions to the federal space.
That's fantastic. Thank you for that, Cam. Chris Townsend, I'd love to hear your perspectives. You kind of got on the rocket ship a little earlier, but you're on a rocket ship nonetheless.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that, Tom. Yeah, I joined Uipath September of 2019, so a bit in advance of Cam and Matt, but not too long. I've been here about 15, 16 months now, and like DocuSign, like Zoom, as a result of COVID and the move to telework, our business really accelerated. No one was quite sure what was going to happen in February, March timeframe as a result of the lockdowns and some of the challenges and how the remote work environment was going to affect our go-to-market and our business. But, many folks outside of government or that don't work with the federal or state and local government don't realize the incremental burden that our government customers took on during this, this very difficult time of COVID. They had to work in this telework environment like everyone did in the private sector and the government sector, but they also had to administer all of these COVID programs, and they had to get these benefits out to the citizens. They had to process unemployment benefits. They had to process PPP loans. They had to collect all of the data surrounding COVID and do the analysis at CDC and HHS. So while they were navigating these challenges that everyone else had with telework, they were doubly burdened by taking on the responsibility for administering these programs. And what we found was automation could really play a role in helping them work through that incremental burden and also administer a lot of the backlog that resulted from COVID through telework. Because as we all know, there are still a lot of government systems that are mainframe based, on-prem, don't lend themselves to effective utilization through telework. So being able to automate a lot of those back-end systems, be able to link some legacy systems with modern systems, and be able to automate a lot of that back office process really helped our government customers through this time. And unlike my peers on the panel, Cam at DocuSign and Matt at Zoom, not everyone may be familiar with Uipath, so I'll take or automation in general. So I'll take a quick 50,000 foot overview. Essentially, what our technology does is allows you to automate any mundane, repetitive process. And we can leverage AI and ML and many other capabilities and build those into our workflows. But if you look at what our government customers do on a day-to-day basis in terms of claims processing, document processing, information gathering, aggregating data, analyzing data, a lot of those steps don't require cognitive input, right? A lot of them are just taking data from one system, loading them into another. So the more that we can automate those processes and allow our government employees to focus on high value work rather than low value work, allows them to be more effective and better support the mission of the agency and therefore better deliver citizen services and serve the constituents of the agencies. And that's really, in my time in federal, I've been in federal now since 2003. So, 17, 18 years. And worked for a number of leading IT companies, but I've never seen a technology that has such an impact on our government customers and can solve so many problems so quickly. And the adoption of this across our federal and our state and local agencies has just been incredible and accelerated as a result of COVID. And as Cam and Matt both mentioned, we are going to be in a hybrid environment going forward, and no one's 100% sure what that's going to look like, right? Are we going to stay in this full telework environment? Are we going to go back to work 50%, 70%? I think that remains to be seen, but certainly this telework environment is here to stay. So how do we continue to be more productive through this telework environment, or increase productivity through this telework environment? It's going to be using tools like automation, like Zoom, like DocuSign, and certainly, like as was mentioned in the keynote, AI, machine learning are going to continue to play important roles. And as we look ahead to the new administration coming in, I really think there's going to be a focus on continued digital modernization. That's going to be very much a part of the focus of the new administration. Leveraging AI and ML as part of that, but also how do we start to leverage technology to improve citizen service delivery, right? How do we more quickly process disability benefits through Social Security, Medicare benefits for retirees, deliver benefits to veterans, right? And leveraging technology and digital modernization to do that. And there's a big role that that automation, AI, and ML can play, as well as DocuSign and Zoom and a lot of these other technologies. So, if you look at the it's hard to say that any positives come out of what we've gone through this past year because it's been so difficult. But I think highlighting the role that technology can play on improving efficiency and citizen service delivery and digital modernization in government, I think was highlighted through this challenging time that that we've all experienced. And again, I think the new administration is going to embrace that and continue to deliver that, as well as the state and local government. I just picked up state and local recently, and you look at some of the solutions that we brought to bear in New York and California, Florida, Georgia, other states in terms of being able to process the backlog of unemployment claims, being able to deliver services to folks through DMV remotely and improving satisfaction there. There's just a lot of work we did with Health and Human Services at the state level, and I believe that's just going to continue. So I'm really optimistic about how things are going to move forward in the future in this new hybrid environment.
Yep. Thank you for that, Chris. And Michael, you want to add any color to what you see what the government has adapted to this? Any data that we can look at? I know the CARES Act had a lot of money put toward this remote computing. Anything you want to add to this conversation?
Sure. So I think Pew Research had some interesting studies out, I believe last week or last 2 weeks, looking at federal government employees working from home. And I think on average pre-COVID, it was something like 1 day a week. And then, now what they envision post-COVID in the survey they did, it's closer to 3.5 days a week. So, this concept, as Matt talked about, you're either in the office, at home, or a hybrid. I mean, this hybrid, I wouldn't say it's permanent, but it's certainly going to be an extended period of time. And of our, we work with every federal agency. We certainly saw a huge dispersion in quality of work from home culture, tools. We had some people effectively doing their job off of a mobile phone, and then other people were seamless. And I think for all of us, you kind of have to split your approach with your existing relationships, where you kind of continue to build them. But when you talk about building a new relationship and someone's still struggling with work from home, which hopefully is a relatively small percentage now, I just think you have to be more creative in your approach.
No, I agree. I mean, at ATARC, pretty much everything we were doing before, we're not doing anymore. We'd have the once a week meeting. Now we have team touch-ups in the morning using Zoom. The amount of work that's coming out of this place these days is just crazy. I thought we were doing a lot of work before when we were having physical events. We're almost like the Netflix station. We've got probably like 6 webinars going on this week. It's really changed the way we do business. I actually want to do a poll a little early because I want to ask a question about this based on the poll results. But Alyssa, can we throw up the first poll question? I think this will be, what's the biggest challenge for your sales team in this new virtual landscape? Networking and building relationships, developing new skills, customer engagement, collaboration, other. I know we have a lot of sales folks out there. I'm really interested to see the results, and we can discuss it with my first question of the day. So we just need a couple seconds here. Everybody get a chance. Okay, what do we got, Alyssa? Yep, not so surprising. At ATARC here, we've kind of our claim to fame was we'd have in-person government events with mostly government, and a lot of our sales folks, that was their, I think, kind of their primary thing. I go press the flesh. So you don't have that now as much. So maybe Cam, how's it been working at DocuSign? What have you been kind of dealing with this dilemma and how you've handled it?
Absolutely. The lack of that networking has been really challenging. So our teams have been attending more industry events, virtual industry events. It's really hit or miss on the effectiveness. I think it's great from a consumption perspective, but not great on the interpersonal interaction perspective. So our feeling is, while we're very busy, a lot more meetings, but it's really taking a lot of intentional outreach to cultivate those personal relationships. One of the other things that we've noticed in terms of not only the quantity of meetings, but the quantity of people on meetings is increased during COVID because people are more available. Since everyone is virtual, you can include people on the West Coast and the East Coast meeting because they don't feel like the odd man out there virtually. So that in itself lends itself for being slightly more formal and a little bit less conversational when you have a larger group of people. So we've been encouraging our teams to make sure that they schedule time for that one-on-one outreach to customers. Also to really be intentional and invest time doing networking with partners in that one-on-one. And it's something that you have to schedule, but you call, I call people and say, hey, I just want to schedule some time for us to catch up. And that would be something that we probably would be doing after hours at a networking event. But unfortunately, we're going to have to make time for those things during the day. In speaking with my team in preparation for this, they felt that the productivity gains still outweighed the lack of that relationship building and networking. But I think we're going to have to be much more intentional in networking moving forward and make it part of how we do business on a daily basis.
Great. Thank you. And Matt? Yeah, I think, people are still using social media. I am probably inundated with requests over LinkedIn. And, part of it is you're willing through what people want to do and help them and how you want to help them. That could be people who are, struggling because their company wasn't, was having challenges and they're looking for a role. It could mean that somebody has a small business, has a solution they want to try to have someone take a look at. So you try to help and connect people that way. The second part is, you look at what we're doing even on the ATARC industry board, like influencers. People, we're all talking because we're all going through the same thing, and our team talks about the interaction. The number one thing is a human connection. So we have people who get on calls, and I'm doing a call, and let's say somebody's not on video, I'll ask them to get on video, because right now, if you're not on video, there's no human connection. The human connection is two people seeing each other. And there's people I'm working with across government who I did not know before this time frame. And there's times where we'll talk. I've talked on weekends just to catch up with them. And what the comfort of this type of our platform is, people are used to it. They're used to do it with their family reunions, friends, happy hours, game nights, dinners, cooking, magicians. And so that becomes ingrained in the fabric of their personal lives. So now that ease of use and that experience that people have, so you're building trust, shaking a hand is great, giving a hug, great. But now you're having to do that all virtually. And this interaction here, our team really pushes forward on, making sure they're calling out to other people. Who are they interacting with? And people are accepting, not just because, we're where we are as a platform and people want to use it. It's really that people are trying to understand how they're transforming their businesses and implementing it. If I implement this technology, can I get more productivity for our meetings? How do I do? My secretary wants to do town halls and wants to communicate out to everybody. Those are the things of the human connection that really tie everything back. And so all of a sudden now, as you start to bring that value from a sales side, what are those things that you could provide from a human connection or connecting with other people, industry leaders across the federal space? If you're not in somewhere, someone else is, hey, do you know this person? What do you, could you make a warm introduction? We've done this before, and it's successful. So don't think of your teams not knowing, just going out and making cold calls and things, which they should be doing. The other part is, how do you leverage other peers in industry and ask them what's going on, and also at the same time, when they ask you for assistance for a warm introduction, you help them as well.
That's a great point. I know at ATARC, I always thought that conference calls were great. They actually stunk. I mean, they were just a terrible. I think you got half my brain when I was on them. I don't know about anybody else, but like I'm doing emails. Meanwhile, it just wasn't a very engaging platform. And at ATARC, I think the biggest thing for us has been the increase of the working groups. And all these government folks are getting on video now. They would never get on video before. Never. Now they're on video, and it's a lot more engaging. We used to have a mix of conference calls and in-person meetings, but I want to get back to, meeting at GSA or whatever. But I think this hybrid, you really get to know the person a little bit with a video that you wouldn't get with the conference call. Chris, you want to add anything?
Yeah, I don't need to repeat everything that Matt and Kim said. They're both spot on. Without the live networking events, without being able to walk the halls in the customer environment, you just have to be more intentional in terms of your planning and your outreach. And it's easy to get into a comfort zone of talking to the same folks, or reacting to internal calls, or reacting to requests for calls, and not really sitting down, putting a plan together, understanding folks that you want to reach out to in the organization, areas where you think you might be able to help, and then having a plan to reach out to those folks. And there are lots of ways to do that, right? You leverage your existing customers and have them make some warm introductions for you, reach out to your partners. You do the same thing, as Matt said, a lot of communications happening via LinkedIn. We've got a lot of folks that are changing in senior leadership positions in government with administration change. So that presents a lot of opportunity to reach out to new folks as well. But, having a plan and being intentional about your outreach and making sure that you're kind of dusting off your inside sales skills and picking up the phone and reaching out to folks. And Tom, I agree with your point 100%. Now that everyone is using video, what used to be a conference call is now a video session is just much more engaging, much more productive. And you're having a much better time communicating with folks over video than we did in the past over conference calls.
Chris,
Tom, I think.
Yeah, go ahead, Cam. Sorry
about that. I do think Chris touched on one point that we should double click on here, is the fact that there is so much change going on in Washington. And I think one great gift that we bring to our customers is the fact that all of us on the phone are talking with people in a variety of agencies. And sometimes our customers are not. They're talking with people in their bubble, in their agency. And I think a fabulous benefit that we can bring to those relationships today is connecting our customers with people in other government agencies that are facing similar challenges. So we can, the sales community can actually act as a conduit to helping our customers network with people, because let's face it, they're used to being in DC and running into people on public transportation. So they're also missing those opportunities. So I think that we should not hesitate, and salespeople who are on this call should not hesitate to recognize that as an opportunity. And, you know, I've put it out there to a couple customers and they've said, oh, no, thank you, it's okay. But there's been a couple cases where it's been a really meaningful connection that we've been able to make. And I had one case where I was attending a call with a deputy CIO who made a comment about hiring. I had spoken with a deputy CIO in another agency who said that they were looking for a different job, and I connected them. And it was a great thing for both parties. So I think we should encourage the people listening to this call to look for those opportunities to align people around challenges that they're facing throughout this modernization efforts, because some agencies' lessons learned will be beneficial to other agencies.
Great. Thank you for that. My next question, and just to frame it a little bit, is like, how is the tempo? How do we construct our sales? For us at ATARC, we basically had 7 physical events a year. We had some working groups, but we'd have 7 physical a year. And the way we did sales is we're calling about the next event. We basically have a whole portfolio of digital services that we created from scratch, from newsletter. And it's totally changed the way we sell. And I kind of like the stacking of the meetings now. You can really do a lot, but by the time I drove, it's like, how many times can I even be involved? It's all changed. So I'd be really interested, pre-COVID, how did your sales teams look? How did you do touch-ups and pipeline? How does it change now? Really, how does it work now? And maybe we'll start off with you, Matt.
Yeah, so if you think about the hardest part in this whole COVID thing was forecasting, because it was all over the board. And so all of a sudden, somebody needs something and you're trying to gauge this and timing, and you're starting to see things coming to some normalcy. But it's you never know what we're gonna see next. But we're big AI users, data centric driven, a lot of data scientists who help us pull information, statistics out there. And we use Salesforce, we use Clarity for other analytics as well. So from that point, we really haven't seen any challenges around that part. I think it's just right now the hard part is we're seeing, the one thing I will say is, like I mentioned very early on, was we're seeing sales cycles speed up, because you can get attorneys, you can get contracting people on a call to quickly walk through, instead of the back and forth, let's go down there and meet with them and talk about it. You can get on a call, put it up on a screen, walk through, okay, that red line, okay, we agree to that. It's that speed to execution. One, you're getting the solution in the customer's hands and make them successful. The second part is you're cutting down that sales cycle and increasing your opportunities for your team.
Great. Cam?
Absolutely. We're having to really help the account executives manage their time efficiently, because frugality of time is one of the most precious commodity that we have. And so many people were saying, I've on so many Zoom calls, I don't have time to do my job. And so we've said, listen, you have to manage your time and your schedule, and make sure that you don't schedule yourself back to back to back, and that you schedule in work times, and then you really stick to those as though they were a customer meeting. The other thing is, previously on conference calls, no agendas, no typed up notes. And now we've had to get into the habit, because we would never have an in-person meeting without an agenda. so we have to treat Zoom meetings like in-person meetings. And so we have to apply some of that rigor, like typed agendas, written up summaries, actionable follow-up items with dates and delivery dates. But again, those things take time. So it takes a little more time to schedule a meeting and publish an agenda. And then it takes time, and you have to assign someone to take notes and get those notes out in a timely manner. So we're encouraging people to really manage the time. Definitely where we can do more, in a work day, let's do that. But let's also make sure that we don't get sloppy along the way, and managing the time and scheduling that admin time in, and then really respecting it and holding it is very important.
Great. Chris?
From a system standpoint, being a relatively new company, we had all cloud-based systems, so we really didn't have an impact of telework from a system standpoint and the ability of our teams to do their jobs. Customer interaction obviously changed, right? Everything went to Zoom, and we had to or went to remote, and we had to adapt to that. But I was impressed at how quickly our government customers were able to make that transition to moving forward and not slowing the business of government down through that, and obviously being able to move forward with a lot of the COVID programs. That changed our prioritization. We had a lot of in-flight projects we were working on, and a lot of those shifted due to COVID, and COVID became the priority, obviously. One of the challenges that I saw, and both Cam and Matt alluded to, was just the amount of time we were working all day, right? There were no breaks. There were days where you get on a call at 7 o'clock in the morning and finish at 7 at night with no breaks, eating at your desk. You didn't have the distractions of the day of your commute or running into somebody in the office or going out to lunch or driving to a meeting, right? It was just back to back to back. And I started to notice on my team, it was impacting morale, right? There was, people were stressed. Some people were a little short-tempered, and it was really important that we scheduled breaks in the day. I actually did a video message to my team and said, hey, look, I need everybody to pick 2 or 3 times during the day, schedule an hour for yourself, go outside, go for a run, go for a, bike ride, whatever it is, but make sure you're blocking time on your calendar for that, mental health well-being and physical well-being, and just pushing away from your desk. And that also allows you to start to think more proactively on, what you really want to accomplish, rather than just reacting to all the internal Zoom calls. And then, the last point I'll make is, as leaders, we were really worried about facilitating collaboration and communication and keeping people engaged and focused. And I think we over-rotated on that a bit and probably scheduled too many internal meetings, as Cam mentioned, where, folks were on, if they're not on a customer call or a partner call, they're on an internal call. And we consciously swung that pendulum back the other way and said, hey, look, we're doing too many of these. Folks are getting burnt out on these calls. Let's go from, every week to every other week. And that's had a great benefit too, as everyone's got more comfortable in the cadence of remote work. But we're all kind of figuring that out on the fly.
Thank you. And Michael, you want to add anything?
Sure. I think I probably have a little bit different experience with the other panelists, because you already had growing companies. I mean, I walked into a turnaround 3 years ago, so there's nothing in this company that we didn't strip down to the studs and rebuild. So our front office team, we doubled last year, and I love Cam's line, frugality of time. That's something we spend a lot of time talking about. Best practices. Don't meet with the same people. Apportion your time to the value of your opportunity. I think I was one of the 10% who answered developing sales skills on your poll, because we have a ton of government users signing up every hour. So there's more than enough stuff to do. It's apportioning your time. And what I find interesting now is just the inertia of people's workflows. They're much more open to changing, which I think is a good thing if you want to sell someone new. I mean, the funny thing for us is we used to have a print directory business, and we still have maybe 4 or 5% of our clients still on print. And actually, the ones most resistant to changing were some of the tech companies. So we had, people who ran tech teams or government affairs still using some of our print directories. So I think kind of combining all this of like, just, where do you want to spend your time? And then at least with our team, like we always encourage, looking for productivity, like find dot connectors within your clients. Who are people that can refer you to others? Because if you can kind of have some of your clients acting as advocates and referral sources, you're just going to be much more productive because, I don't care how many video calls you're on every day, you can't be everywhere all at once. So if you can kind of get that, user base working for you, it's just so much more powerful.
Great. How about we do this? How about we go to the next couple of poll questions, Alyssa, because we're talking about the next one refers to the quality of the meetings on our account on your calendar. So I'd love to hear from the audience about it. Pretty simple, just take a moment. Drastic increase to meetings have decreased. So if everybody can contribute to that. Okay, let's see what we have here. I'm kind of interested to see. Let's see what the results are. Drastic increase. Yes, that's probably about right. Any surprises there? No. One thing I've noticed from the government, it's a little bit easier to get a hold of them. The government, I think, schedules themselves a lot, but at least there's, I guess it's more efficient. It seems like I can get meetings with the government folks. It's a little bit easier. I don't know. I guess for slotting reasons. And the other thing I've noticed is it's like always like a delay before you start the meeting because everybody has to like run across the building and get in a room. Has anybody noticed anything like around that?
Yeah, Tom, absolutely. The efficiency of the meetings has improved. I think people are more adept at planning for the meetings and having tight agendas and having their talking points and our government customers, just like we're talking about, are in the same boat. They're able to do more meetings over the course of a day, and they're able to plan their meetings more effectively. And you have, less disruption of things running over and walking to conference rooms, and all of those things are contributing to the improvement of the quality of the meetings.
The other piece I'll add is I think that it's how we set the tone for meetings, right? So people schedule meetings for an hour, half hour, and you're like, okay, this could have been done in 10, 15 minutes. So I go to my team, I'll say, this is a 15-minute meeting. So I met with our head of, global government affairs. A 15-minute meeting, we covered 8 topics. Boom, 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 right there. Okay, got this. Okay, cool. All right, good, great. And all of a sudden, when you start to look at all those meetings, I counted up 2 Thursdays ago between 8 a.m. and 8:30 p.m. I did 20 meetings, and I had a half-hour break. And so it was, it was one of those things that you just, when people are working through that, so you start to be respectful, you start to do something different with your customers. And if someone says, hey, if you only have a couple of minutes with somebody, do it. If you're scheduling a call with a customer and they're brand new and they want to do something, schedule a 15-minute call versus a 30-minute call or an hour call. And they're like, well, that's pretty cool. That's pretty good use of my time. So I can have that conversation. That's your opportunity to get in the door, both internally and externally.
Yep. Cam, you want to add anything?
I love those suggestions. I have been scheduling more 45-minute calls than 1-hour calls because I find that having an extra 15 minutes myself will often mean the difference between eating and not eating in the course of the workday. I love that idea of the quick 15-minute meetings. Matt, I'm going to take that back to my team. Thanks for the tip.
Yeah, I've noticed with government people, they are absolutely super appreciative when you can just get to the getting and get them off the call. I still will schedule like a half an hour, and if it lasts 15 minutes, that's a good thing because they can cram in emails or eat or something. They seem to really appreciate it. I don't take the full 30 minutes because I could. I think that they definitely appreciate that. Let's go to our last poll question because I want to ask some questions around this topic. Alyssa, if you can stick it up. It's basically, what is your organization's largest focus during the pandemic? Changes on how we go to market, investing in your team's skill sets, adapting the way you communicate with customers, or other. So we will do that really quickly. All right, let's see what our results look like, Alyssa. Very interesting. Well, anybody want to take a crack at that? I thought investing in the new skills was going to be pretty important. It's really the old skills. You know, can you do research? The things that when I was an inside salesperson back in the day, the things that I did, I think all salespeople should have that inside sales mentality to a degree. Do the right research, really know what your customer is. Cam, maybe you want to add something to that?
Well, I think that what we're seeing now is that customers are doing more meetings in the course of a day, but they're also now, because companies have changed the way we are outreaching to those customers, as indicated with the poll response, we're doing a lot more webinars. So we're doing a lot more outbound push. And my husband's in product leadership for his company, and he said that what is happening is that this new emphasis in marketing is creating a lot of noise for customers. And so they're really having to be intentional in how they receive and how they prioritize their time. And in some cases, we had a customer say to us, listen, I've got to do my job, so I'm not going to be talking to any vendors for the next month. I've got to figure out how to solve this problem. Thank you for your input on how to solve it, but don't call me for 4 weeks, because I'm not going to take your call, and I'm going to be pretty firm about it. And so I think in this new business environment, our customers have to figure out how to accomplish their mission, taking inputs from industry and balancing that with actually executing on their roles in a similar way that we're doing that on our side with salespeople, and how we, have changed onboarding, et cetera. I can say, in terms of onboarding and in that investment in skill development, we're definitely changing our onboarding. We have a great program that I thought was very effective when I came on board, but what we've learned in the months since then is we have to have a very prescriptive mentoring program to help our salespeople be more effective. And it's not a 30-day or 45-day mentoring program like we maybe used to have, but it's more of a 6-month onboarding program. So we're now augmenting our corporate onboarding with classes every week that are associated to a prescribed mentoring play for that week. And we're having a lot of effectiveness with that. So there's just so many elements to this particular question, because there is this need to help onboard new employees, as well as up-level the skills of some of our current employees, because not everybody is good at presenting in a Zoom meeting. I actually have a coach, and she said to me, why aren't you looking at me? And I said, what do you mean I'm looking right at you? And she said, well, you're probably looking at my picture, but you're not looking at your camera. So it actually looks like you're looking over here. And that was a big eye opener for me. And sometimes we have to, that's the kind of thing that we need to be working with our employees on, is how they have that interaction with the camera, and where's the camera relative to their customer's face on the screen, and helping them move the face image underneath the camera so that you can have that more close connection. But those are some of the things that we're doing to try to help improve the skills that we're bringing to market, but we're also trying to be very respectful of our customers' time and their ability to consume all of the information that we're putting out.
I think that's a really good point, because we never had Zoom training before. We just, those little things you took for granted. I think I've done about 50 webinars now. I think like the second one, I had my mute button on for about 3 minutes, and things like that. Hopefully I don't do that again. Matt, you want to add anything?
Yeah, I think, I kind of look at it as the team skills. And it really ties back because, one of the things we learned early on, we exploded from, 10 million, participants to 300 million and growing. And they actually took a step back and put a lot of training videos online for people to watch, how to maybe you watch it, Tom. Maybe you didn't. How to unmute yourself button training. Those kind of things. So, those things are out there. And then we took it to the next level, right? So you think about what was going on with teachers and schools and, the kids. I have two in college and one in senior high school, and they were all going through different cycles on this. But you think of those kindergarten, first grade, second grade, third grade. Parents are trying to work at the same time their kids are trying to do something, and there's stress amongst there. So we're all working in this environment. But we ended up doing a 2-day education academy for teachers, how to train them how to utilize the technology better, and this was worldwide. So now we start to look at, people say, hey, how do I do this better? There's tons of training we have across there. But investing in, I call the professional and personal skill sets of the team. We make sure you have access to, let's say, Govwin, to access information on your customer and know that we're giving you these tools to put these things in place.
Yeah.
How do we quickly cut out having to do a lot of research, but can we consolidate some of that? And then what I'll say in this time is most important is personal development, and I call investing in the team. So I'm a big workout guy. So I have my Peloton bike, tread. I work out in the mornings every day because that's how I want to start my day, and it gives me energy. And by the time the end of the day, I'm too fried to do anything. But what I did, you find unique ways. In a previous life, I got a yoga instructor, and they showed everybody how to do stretches with the chair. That's it, just a chair. I had another person come on in a meeting, and it was a yoga ball, and they actually showed how to roll a ball on your feet, which actually release some of the muscles in your upper back, which you could say. So little things you can do to also help people with their drinking. I just had this conversation with a guy who said his head hurt. Well, he was dehydrated and he wasn't drinking. I said, you're supposed to drink 50% of your weight in ounces of water. And so all of a sudden, like 3 days later, he calls me and goes, you know what? I feel great. Like I'm not getting headaches. I saw another guy who did this for 3-4 months. He's lost 80 pounds. So when we start to look at our team, it's not just that personal development, but that mental health, that whatever it is, what they're going through. People are still going through tough times. And how do we make investments in our teams and the people, and also with our customers, and make something fun. If you're going to have a meeting with someone, hey, we're gonna pull this person in to do a quick cooking show. It doesn't cost them a dime, doesn't drain you, cost you any money for a customer. But those are the skill set components and the things that are outside the tangible. These intangible things are what make the difference, and where people start to follow leaders versus just working at a job.
Great. How about you, Chris?
Go back to the poll questions, Tom. I would have expected that, this fundamentally changed most organizations go to market. I mean, certainly in our public sector business, it has. It affects how we do marketing. It affects how we do customer engagement. It affects how we're working, with the channel. It affects our solutioning. So all aspects of our business were affected by this, and will continue to be going forward. So, if you look at the poll questions, I would have expected kind of more, broader impact on the overall go-to-market of the organization, especially as it relates to public sector. I do want to expand on something that Matt said too, because I think it's important. As this shutdown drags on, it's really important for us as organizations and as leaders to be very sensitive to the challenges that our teams are going through personally, right? Having kids, I've got 2 high schoolers at home. I've got a junior and a sophomore, and I just see the impact on them and the challenge of remote schooling. I know a lot of, my peers and folks in the team, they're all going through similar challenges. And as this drags on, I think it puts more and more of a strain on families and people that we're not talking about enough. And we really have to think, and it's one of the things I love about being at Uipath, and it sounds like, Matt at Zoom and Cam at DocuSign is very much the same thing, is the culture, and that we're really putting our employees first to make sure that their emotional and mental and physical well-being is a priority. And I think anyone that's leading a sales organization should be thinking about that, because it's really important.
Great point. We've got a question. I think it's a pretty good one. It's been sitting there for a little bit, so I want to get to it. What's the long-term impact on government operations and contracting do you believe that COVID-19 will have? And maybe we can start off with you, Cam.
Well, I think that we're going to see the government, obviously, they have certain procurement requirements that drive procurements, but I think that we're going to see some efficiencies in processes that they've brought about, because I think what they're looking at now is, where did we make exceptions to our previous procurement regulations because of COVID required purchases? And what was the negative impact of those? And we obviously have had some situations where we were involved in those exceptional situations. We had a situation at HHS where they called us and said, listen, we've got to give $75 billion of aid out in 8 days. Can you help us? It was a Thursday. Can we have the portal live next Friday at 5 p.m.? And so obviously the procurement process there was dramatically condensed on that, both from the product and services all the way around, not just DocuSign, but the other solutions involved. And then what has happened is the government has audited that whole process, and we've all gone through lots of questions, which is great because we all followed the rules. But I think what the government found was, when we had to have some elasticity in the rules, correct procedures were followed. And there was no negative impact, and the right solution was brought to bear for the problem. And we were able to get that service out to that constituent group in record time. So I think that they're going to be continuing to look for ways where the procurement processes can have flexibility. I know another area is in DoD procurement. Obviously, IL4 is a big requirement for cloud solutions, but DISA is in a big backlog right now to get things IL4 certified. So now some of the branches of the military are looking at where can they accept FedRAMP compliance as long as the cloud solution is in one of the public cloud providers that has similar security features. So I think we're going to continue to see procurement processes revisited with an emphasis on where can we make and sort of incorporate some of those efficiencies that were required due to COVID response, and how can we incorporate those in to make some procurement cycles smaller. I do think we're going to have continue the big emphasis on remote work, on digitizing paper. I mean, a lot of people were having to go into offices to do their job because their job relies on paper. So I think the trend towards the continued modernization of processes and the elimination of paper is going to be a pretty big one that we see going, through this entire administration. The other one, obviously, too, again, is big security emphasis. A lot of Congress people are hearing from constituents that their identities are being stolen, whether it's from a tax perspective. I had my own identity stolen, and someone filed taxes and got a hefty return a few years ago, and that's happening pretty regularly, as well as just other government benefits. And so talking with some Congress people lately, that was one big issue. How can we look at a national digital identity for our citizens that spans across their state-run DMV and their benefits given by the VA? And I think we're going to see a lot of that type of thought put into, a secure digital identity for all the citizens of the United States.
No, I think it seems like Congress has taken special attention as we've shifted from like going to the Social Security office to, we want our everything digitally, that they're going to be much more involved because they're getting the feedback from their constituents. So I can definitely imagine that especially as we get new ones in that are going to be tuned to that issue. Michael, how about you?
Yeah, a couple of thoughts. So we work with each agency along with every office on the Hill, and we see this massive challenge around onboarding and best practices around relationship development. It's a huge area to improve. So we've actually done webinars with Partnership for Public Service targeted at the Hill, and then this year we're going to be focusing on our agency clients. One of the things we're doing that hopefully will support federal agencies is we're in the process of launching a service that's actually taken every federal contract over the last 10 years and overlaid who made the decisions on those contracts, from the GS 13s, 14s, and 15s up to the appointees, and then the program managers and contracting officers. And so, we hope to do with that is help people make better decisions. So if they're looking at procuring, robotic process automation, services or cybersecurity, they can network and talk to other people and other agencies who've gone through similar things and said, hey, what were you trying to accomplish? What were some of the mistakes you made? Who are some of the vendors or partners that were thought leaders and helpful to the process. So I think it's this whole idea of best practices in information sharing, which is frankly kind of a a huge area to improve in government. And I think all of us are kind of behind products and services that can help enable that.
Yep. Thank you, Michael. And Matt?
Yeah, in the process, I think the government kind of found out that they can move fast. We're used to the topic of people taking so much time to review things. I think when you get people and you put them in a position that they can make decisions quickly, I think it's just, when I talk about transformation, they're transforming how they're doing contracting, but at the same time, when we're enabled their customers, their end constituents to use these things. As Cam shared that story, people are making decisions, and these decisions are being made faster, and they have to be made faster because they have to react to what's going on. So you see these things. You look over the weekends. They've had all the congressional people had gotten together over a Zoom meeting and made a big decision around stimulus, right? So those are things that, okay, do we have to bring everybody in? No, they can put them in a platform. I've witnessed firsthand live some decisions being made in the government, high level in the government, that were going to impact things across the board. And it was truly amazing to see what they were doing. Now the contracting pieces, people say, hey, it's the challenge, I think Cam also mentioned, is like, you get the DoD hit this for IL4, there's 55 companies, business groups in there right now, and there's only a handful of people doing it. But guess what? If you understand the process and know that if you have your agency sponsor and they've already done their work, and you have the 3PAO, third party authorizing agency, do their work, and that covers steps, you've done with steps 1 and 2, just getting in the system. 3, 4, 5, and 6 all tied to third party authorizing organizations. So you're only at 7 and 8. How do they take those ones and put them on a priority track versus the ones who are just kind of whittling through? And I think it's the ones that are whittling through that slow some of the stuff down for the other ones making decisions. But I don't think you're going to see this change. I think that this, some of our stuff, people go, oh, what's going to happen after the pandemic? I don't think it's going to change. I think people are going to have to make decisions fast, no matter what it's for. And in the contracting, I think they saw firsthand how they can be everybody thought contracting was slow, but now it's an enabler versus a disabler.
Thank you, Matt. And Chris, you're going to get the last word on this. And this panel's gone by so fast. We're already running a little bit late. So
I'll be brief because my fellow panelists really, I agree with everything that they've said. And at the end of the day, the events of the past year are going to be catalysts for digital modernization across all government systems. I think everyone is going to take a step back and examine existing processes and systems and how they can bring technology to bear to move faster, be more efficient, facilitate more teleworking, upgrade some of these legacy systems. And as a result of that, I think everything is going to move faster. Everything is going to become more efficient. We're going to see, digital modernization really improve the ability of the government to serve their constituents. If you look at the number of federal employees, it's really been static over the last 40 years. So you think about the size of the population that the government needs to service. You think about the size and the complexity of the programs that have been developed since the 80s. And we have the same number of people doing that work. It's no wonder that our federal employees are overwhelmed. And it's really important that we leverage these technology tools to drive these efficiencies. And I think that it was a wake-up call over the past year that, hey, these tools are out there. We can do it. To Matt's point, we can move a lot faster, and we really need to re-examine the way we've done things. And sometimes a crisis is the forcing function there.
Great. Well, thank you all. Thank you, Chris and Matt and Cam and Michael. This has been a great panel. I appreciate your time, and I think it was very helpful to everybody. And everybody have a good day. But the next portion of this program, we're going to introduce Hugh Murphy, who is at Leadership Connect, and he's going to really talk to us about, give us a little demo of Leadership Connect. And I have to be honest, I use it, and I think we talked about it. Your game, your research game is very, very important these days. So you can maximize your meetings, identify the right people. So looking forward to Hugh and Michael. You gonna hang out too?
I'm going to stay on.
Okay, great. Well, I'll turn the program over to Hugh. And once again, this is a fantastic, we use it, we're big believers in it, but it really helps you identify the people that are heading all these contracts, and they've made some nice features, changes that have really taken it to the next level. So how are you doing today, Hugh? There we go.
Tom, thanks for having me. And I just wanted to start off sharing my screen, but really I've been kind of hanging out here all morning and really enjoyed all the great insight from the panelists and the discussion so far.
Oh, sorry, Hugh, go right on ahead and dive right into it.
Great, thanks, Tom. So Michael obviously gave a brief overview of who we are at Leadership Connect, people intelligence service that's tracking leaders across the public and private sectors. So if you look here at the screen, Michael mentioned 4,000 clients. What's interesting is many of our clients are also the communities that we are tracking, and in many cases are contributors. So for example, for today's purposes, we're really focused on federal government, and that's been the bulk of our discussion. You can see some of the other communities that we're also tracking at Leadership Connect, state and local government, the Hill, as well as many organizations in the private sector. And again, I think we'll focus primarily on the federal space. I think Michael mentioned in his comments earlier, though, that a big part of why we cover a lot of these other areas is because there's so much movement between the public and the private space, and folks leaving the administration, joining a think tank, a private sector corporation, etc. And that could really be interesting and something to keep an eye on as you are looking to build relationships in this new administration. One example I'll just quickly show here is a gentleman who worked in the DoD under the Obama administration, who's now at Atlantic Council. Atlantic Council has close ties with President-elect Biden. And so, this is a good example of someone that, we can look at and potentially, no saying what his plans are in the future, but, you can see here with what we're covering, education, career history. So not just, contact information, email, phone number, but really looking at what this individual has done in the past. You can see the time spent in the DoD during the Obama administration years. And so something like that, I think, is really helpful when you think about the different communities that we're covering. Just briefly, where is all this information coming from? I know Michael gave a great overview of who we are, but we're receiving information from clients, as I mentioned, the government being one of our largest clients, and therefore have a great reciprocating relationship with them to not only work with them as clients, but also as contributors. So if you look here, you can see, I think Michael had this already on his slide, but the government being our largest client. So making those relationships important, both from our perspective as a product, but also for our data science team, who's all based in DC, and building relationships and verifying all this information that I'm about to show you. I thought what would be interesting, and in the essence of time, is to really use an example of how someone may leverage our service. Many times we know who we're looking for, or we need a contact, we need the office that we're interested in connecting with and looking to see who the best person is. Other times we come across something in the news or in social media or in a conversation at an event that triggers an opportunity. And so here's an example of an article that our team on the data science team wrote about who's advising CISA's Office of the Director. And we know about some of the changes here. And we're really focused on who the main individuals are influencing the Office of the Director at CISA. We list out a few people. So this is something as an example where you might want to leverage a service like ours, especially when you're not able to connect with people in person at an event, et cetera, and see who these folks are. You can see some of the information that we're including. Michael talked at length about Schedule C appointees. So maybe Charles Faulkner it may not be in this position for a long time in the near future. So there's other people within CISA that you can potentially look at. I think one of the folks, if I scroll down and trying to scroll slowly so it doesn't jump on the screen for you all. You know, Michael mentioned Steve Harris, the acting deputy director, but also mentioned Kate Nichols. And if we pull Kate's page up, we can see, well, let me just show you Steve's as an example, you know, his title, etc. So this is a way, like, you get an idea from an article, you see where that takes you, and then where we can come in at Leadership Connect is help you identify who you should be reaching out to. So maybe a career SES is a better person, or the example that Michael gave earlier with Kate. The other thing that I wanted to show you today is that we're also collecting information on federal spend and who is the person to speak with at those organizations, not just the contracting officer, but the person ultimately making the decision here. So if I type in a search like artificial intelligence, I can come up with a list of responses on opportunities, current opportunities, focus on AI. And if I click into one of these examples, you know, you can see the basic information on the request. You can see the primary contact in the contracting office, which many of us already are familiar with getting in touch with. But as we all know, and almost all our clients tell us, is by the time something is issued as an RFP, it's too late. They can't act on that. That's kind of old news. The RFP has been created specifically for one or two vendors to compete on, and we really need to build relationships first. If you look at Suzanne Casey, the contracting officer, you know, you can see some of the other opportunities that she's worked on, and it's quite interesting to see the variation from, you know, library services, San Jose hotel, charter vessels, AI. It really runs the gamut. And what we really want to do, if we come back to the opportunity that we're looking at, is really, and this is where Leadership Connect, I think, is really helpful, is it can help show who are the offices influencing this decision. So the funding office, parent office, et cetera, within commerce that we need to speak with. And so if we want to look at one of these offices who's influencing the ultimate purchase decision, you know, this is who we might want to look at and see the individuals within the office who are ultimately going to influence that purchase decision. So again, it's allowing our clients to find the right people to speak with early in the process before even this opportunity is issued, so that you can, when the time comes, you've already established a relationship. And like we talked about all day today, you know, being in front of these opportunities and building relationships before it's too late. I guess just a couple of other other things here. With all the change in the administration, we do have an elections dashboard that we've built out to help track all of the key changes, both at the congressional, federal, and state level. Transition team members, newly appointed federal folks, and if I go into specifically the President-elect Biden's page, you'll see we're covering lots of information on that transition. So you can browse the organization quickly, and it may be hard to read on all of your screens, but looking at incoming White House staff, the transition team, all of the advisors and leaders across several of the big topics that we'll need to focus on in our various segments of the market. And so being able to leverage these new people and get a jump on building relationships with them is really important, as we all know. I guess just in closing, I'm cognizant of coming up on the last few minutes here. Obviously, this is a lot of information, and there's lots of studies done on how much time sales teams spend on research, and what Leadership Connect is really trying to accomplish is help you find the right people at the right time, very simply, and offer that in several different ways. Hopefully someday mobile will be a lot more important when we're all running around and meeting in person. But one of the things I thought I'd also highlight is all of this information can be sort of tailored to what you're interested in for the specific agencies or industries that are most relevant to your particular product. So you can create these email alerts or briefings that will allow you to customize what information we update you on a weekly basis, so you can act on those and use our service in a proactive way, not just from a reactive research focused way. So I think that's everything I wanted to cover for all of you today, and I appreciate the time this morning, Tom, and I'm going to stop sharing my screen and turn it back over to you.
Thank you so much for that, Hugh. Tom actually had to jump for an emergency, but I will be ending the summit today. But thank you so much to everyone who joined us today. We would also like to thank our panelists and speakers again for coming out and sharing their expertise with us. We hope to see you guys later today at our agency spotlight event with GSA, all on digital transformation. It'll be starting at 1:30 p.m. Eastern Time. And we're also hosting a webinar tomorrow, January 14th, on leveraging TIC 3.0 to secure a mobile government workforce, which is also starting at 1:30 p.m. Eastern Time. We hope to see you there. Have a great rest of your day.